The interior of the defensive line for the Titans, the strongest position group on the roster, according to us. We're going to talk through it today. Who are the starters, who are the depth, and who gets cut at the end of training camp. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. In partnership with 440 Sports, I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And today, Justin, we are continuing our training camp preview series, breaking down every position group on the Titans roster, closing out the first of 2 weeks of 10 episodes, each one dedicated to one position group with the interior defensive line. Happy Friday, Justin. How's it going?
Doing well. Yeah, excited to talk about this group. More numbers in this room than I think the average person realizes. Though I will admit, right off the top, I think the numbers here are pretty cut and dry of who sticks around and who doesn't. But there are a lot of intriguing talking points to cover and discuss here.
Yeah, so we have 10 players in this group here as we dive right into this interior defensive line group. 10 players, and I think 4 of them are roster locks. You could maybe consider a 5th a lock. It depends on how you view James Lynch, and it also depends on how many interior D linemen they decide to keep. But the top of the group is pretty obvious. Jeffery Simmons and Keondre Sweat are your starters on the inside of the defensive line. Sebastian Joseph Day is a versatile guy who can play, nose to end. He's not going to play edge, but he can play that DE 3-tech kind of role all the way to the 0-tech. Keondre Coburn, similar, although I think he's a more interior, like super interior guy. And then James Lynch, Carlos Watkins, a couple other veterans. Philip Bleedy, Cam Horsley, Devontae O'Malley, Isaiah Rakes, a bunch of UDFAs in this group as well. So we got everything from the only potential superstar on the Titans roster, and I wouldn't consider Jeffery Simmons a superstar outside of the Nashville market, but as far as sports stars in Nashville, he's the biggest name and the biggest face. And then you have Keondre Sweat, a young player, a rookie. You have veterans like Sebastian Joseph Day. You have Keondre Coburn, who was Keondre Sweat's teammate in college, and the rest of this group will be vying for a potential 5th spot if they decide to keep 5. So, start at the top. I think the most interesting conversation to me here is, what do we expect from Jeffery Simmons this season? Jeffery Simmons was just ranked as the number 4 defensive tackle in the NFL by a poll of 70-something anonymous scouts, GMs, etc., coaches, whatever, all the people that Jeremy Fowler talks to every year for his annual series, ranking what the NFL people think of every position group. And Jeffery Simmons, the 4th best defensive tackle, which I thought was generous considering the year he's coming off of. But in that blurb, somebody noted, an anonymous coach or somebody noted that, it can be tough to be motivated to go out and rush the passer for a bad team that is always losing. We've talked about this in other ways, but it's always easier when you are playing with a lead to pin your ears back and go get the quarterback because the other team's playing catch up. When you're trailing most of the season, it's a lot harder to go rush the passer and get sacks. He didn't have a ton of help either at the edge position that would, free him up for one-on-ones, faced a high double team rate. And he's always going to face a high double team rate, and he's going to have to beat those double teams or take on the challenge of being the guy who draws the attention for other guys to get the sacks. But what would you say is a realistic projection for Jeffery Simmons this season? He has talked openly about wanting to get a double-digit sack season under his belt. He believes this is the year for it. He dropped weight coming into the spring program this year to try to be a more effective pass rusher. What do we think, Jeffery Simmons? If the line was 7.5 sacks, would you take the over or the under?
Ooh, I'd be tempted to take a push because I'll tell you what. By the way, number 4 on the interior D-line rankings, ESPN, like the rare case where most Titans fans, most fan bases in general, but most Titans fans are disappointed with where their favorite players or players on their team rank on those lists. That was one where a lot of Titans fans, as you noted, were like, oh, wow, I didn't think he was going to be that high. Kind of tells you what the league-wide reputation is for Jeffery Simmons. And one of those guys that maybe he's been grandfathered in, like because he's had that reputation for a little while, the opinion doesn't really change, if you know what I mean. What I want to see out of Jeffery Simmons this year, I'll keep this real simple. He was dominant in 2021 and 2022, not quite as good in 2023 and 2024. You want him to get back to what he was. That breakout year in 2021, I think 7.5 sacks, followed that up with 8.5 sacks. He had 16 combined sacks in those 2 seasons. In the 2 seasons since, he's had 10.5 combined sacks. He's been more injured, not effective. 2023 took more games off than he ever has. They were bad, out of the playoff race. He had an injury. Made sense to sit him. But the fact is, over these past 2 years, he's been good, but hasn't reached his performance ceiling. And we saw that ceiling in 2021, 2022, when, again, combined 16 sacks. I don't need 10 sacks out of him, but I need at least 7 or 8, right? Like, I want that to be the Jeffery Simmons again. 2021, 2022, dominating offensive lines up front. He's still really good against the run, by the way. So he's got to continue being that and get back to the pass rusher he was a couple of years ago. I think he's got that in him. I think there's no doubt that he's got that in him. The motivation thing, I thought that was interesting because I think it's fair to say, and I think it's accurate. Like, I imagine it is kind of hard. Like, these 310-pound guys takes a lot of energy. Every pass rushing rep takes a lot of energy out of you. This is not a negative against them. It's got to be tough to do that snap after snap after snap when you're down 52-10 to the Buffalo Bills and you're 3-11. Like, that's what the Titans have gone through over these last couple of years. So I'm rambling. I'll keep it short. I want Jeffery Simmons to be the player that he's been, not the player that he's been over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, he played 16 games last year, only 12 the year before that, 15 the year before that. It'd be nice to see him play 17, but I'm not even asking for that. I don't need 17 games out of him.
8 sacks in 15 games.
Exactly. And give me one of those pop games where you just randomly explode for 2.5 or 3 sacks like he had in those seasons you've been describing.
Remember the Rams
game,
the prime time, the first game after Derrick Henry? I think it was that one where Adrian Peterson's debut as a Titan. You'll never forget it. Where were you when Adrian Peterson made his debut for the Titans? He was dominant in that game.
I was in the building.
That's right. You were. You were working at the NFL. You were in LA still. He was dumb. There was one sack in particular I'll never forget. Never. You remember which one I'm talking about? He pushed that guy all the way into, oh my God, that was one of the most viral sacks I could remember, at least a viral Titan sack I could remember. That's who Jeffery Simmons is at his heart and his core. I want to see it a bit more this year.
And I think there's been there's a superstar arc. And I think that's why I qualified Jeffery Simmons as a Nashville superstar, and not a global national media superstar, but in the Nashville market where we build these players up when they're young and they have a lot of exciting potential and we can't wait to see their careers unfold. And then they don't quite ever achieve that super thing that we're waiting for, whether it's, Peyton Manning failing to go win a Super Bowl until 2006 or whatever year he finally did it. Or Tony Romo can't win a playoff game. It's like once the standard has been set and the expectations get raised, they continue to be raised to a point where you never quite meet them. And then the fans start to tear you down for not meeting those expectations that you set for them. And I think Jeffery Simmons has gone through that in Nashville. And a lot of those arcs end with a redemption. And I'm looking forward to this season sort of being Jeffery Simmons' redemption. And it's got to be this year, Justin. And if it's not this year, Jeffery Simmons will not be a Tennessee Titan anymore if it's not this year. I think this is a high-stakes season for him, and the reason I say that is his contract this year. We remember he signed a 4-year, $94 million contract ahead of the 2024 season, it enacted in the 2024 season. 4-year, $94 million contract. He's playing this year, the second year of that deal, at a $22.7 million cap number. That's a huge number that goes up to $25.4 million against the cap in 2026. Now, they wouldn't, obviously, and they can't financially cut him this year. Dead cap is much greater than his cap hit. But next year, for the 2026 season, $25.4 million cap hit, only 9.6 dead cap. That's approximately $16 million in cap savings.
I almost want to stop you right here. I think this is a little bit nonsense. I think when you hear, unless he's injured the whole year, truly terrible, you hear Brian Callahan talk about Jeffery Simmons, Denard Wilson, Chad Brinker. I just think there is a different version of Jeffery Simmons in our minds. What the Titans think of him, what the NFL thinks of him, number 4 on that ESPN poll, as you said, it would have to be full-blown. If Jeffery Simmons has 6 sacks this year, he's on the 2026 Titans. The only way he's not on the 2026 Titans, if they get a trade offer that blows them away, outright cut, nonsense.
I don't think he'll be outright cut. I think he will renegotiate his deal after this year. I think they'll figure something out that gives him a big payment in the form of guarantees that lowers this cap number. If he has 5 sacks, he's not playing on a $25.4 million cap number for a regime that didn't draft him or re-sign him. That's just how the NFL works. And if he's great, if he has 8 sacks and a bunch of run stops and tackles for loss, and he's the dominant presence that we've seen in the past, but not the recent past, then yeah, he can play on this $25.4 million cap number because he's the best player on the defense, and he's still probably the best Titan on the roster. So he's worth it for that standpoint. But if he continues a downward trend that we've seen over the last 2 years, then you say maybe he peaked and he's not worth this kind of money. And we're getting a little off topic here of the IDL preview.
Last thing I'm going to say about it. You know what the ironic part of this conversation is? The ironic part. If he has 8 sacks and you're saying he could play on this cap number, he might feel he's due a raise. Because he's earning $23 million a year. Top D tackle now makes $31. Okay, he's $9 million under the top. Guys are making $31 million now at his position. This stuff, you don't think this matters? He's number 4 in the polls. You don't think he knows that? You don't think his agent knows that? He has a great year this year. Don't be surprised if the contract goes the other direction to what you're projecting.
I actually think that is the most likely outcome. I think Jeffery Simmons has a bounce back year. I think he signs a new short-term deal that erases the last 2 years of this contract to give him more payment in a high average annual salary with a guaranteed payment that cuts the cap hit down. So you can do both. You give him more money and lower the cap hit, and sign him to like a new 3-year extension where you may or may not have any intention of him actually playing that 3rd year out, based on what the guaranteed money looks like. But he gets a raise in the short term and sticks around as the veteran leader.
3 years, $85 million. It might be something like that if that's the route that goes. Let's get into Tavondre.
Wait, real quick. Last thing before Tavondre said. Sorry, I know this is not supposed to be one of our longer episodes here. Full disclosure to the audience. We did 40 plus minutes on wide receivers yesterday. We're not trying to do the same on IDL. But last thing I want to say is that I do think
track. Let's go.
I do think Cam Ward helps Jeffery Simmons a lot. And it helps the entire interior defensive line group.
Better offense, a better team, sure.
Because Cam Ward's going to put up points, and he's going to keep you in games and possibly get you leads that allow you to go rush the passer and pin your ears back like we're talking about, and not have to worry that you won't have to stop the run as much because you have more points on the board and you're leading games more. I think Cam Ward is going to be massive for Jeffery Simmons, even though they play completely different sides of the ball. And I think he's also going to be big for the rest of this group as well. So yes, let's get to it. Tavondre Sweat entering year 2 was, I don't know if outstanding is hyperbolic to say about his rookie year, but I kind of want to say he was outstanding as a rookie. Is that too much?
I think he was really good. And if you look at some of the metrics, like Pro Football Focus is completely in love with Tavondre Sweat.
Yeah.
76.1 overall grade, 75 as a run stopper, 64.5 as a pass rusher. I think that's fair. He only had 23 pressures per their metrics. He had 1 sack. Look, he answered a lot of the questions. Oh, he can't play a lot. No, he played almost 700 defensive snaps is the number that I've got in front of me. Like, he was a workhorse for them. He was an early down run stopper, played well. Again, some of the advanced metrics, PFF, they absolutely love him. Next gen stats, all these analytic companies and departments loved him. Think there's a step forward for him to take as a pass rusher this year. Brian Callahan said the same thing when he spoke about him at the podium. That was my main concern when they drafted Tavondre Sweat in the top 40. Does he do enough to rush the passer? I'm going to say in year 1 that he didn't, that he fell just a little short at that. Yes, he does the dirty work. He eats up double teams, creates advantageous matchups for his teammates, one-on-ones, opportunities for his teammates. I think he's got to do a bit better himself. I want to see him get in the backfield a bit more in the passing game. I'm not saying I don't like Tavondre Sweat. I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm not saying any of that nonsense like that. I just think there's another level for him to unlock, to live up to the billing, to live up to the ceiling, and I'd like to see him do it this season.
And I kind of think he will. And I think the whole construction of this group, interior, defensive line, and edge combined, plays to his strengths. And I use strength almost as a pun there because I think, a lot of his ability to beat the offensive lineman in front of him. Yeah, he's got some deceptively quick ability to swim around and dip under and rip under guys, but his best trait is going to be the power and just walking people back. And if your edge rushers are now bigger, more powerful players, which is what the Titans added this year, that's going to decrease the quarterback's ability to just retreat and escape away from T'Vondre Sweat's bull rushes, because if the pocket's collapsing from all sides and all these guys are coordinating their pass rushes more, it's going to be a more effective rush from T'Vondre Sweat because there's not going to be anywhere else for the quarterback to go. So I think that helps him. And I think just entering year two, we see this all the time. A rookie has a promising season. They look like they can hack it at this level, and that's the biggest question mark. And now it's about, okay, we take the rookiness away. You know what you're doing now from day one, from the spring, where you actually get a chance to refine your techniques instead of preparing for the draft and take that next step forward. And so I fully expect, as a biased Hook'em alumni, I fully expect T'Vondre Sweat to take that next step and join Jeffery Simmons as one of the premier interior defensive line tandems in the NFL. I think that is the potential that this group has. And, he played all 17 games last year. He started 16, which is impressive for a rookie, of course. And I think that we're going to see that next step taken. And I'm excited to see him when the pads come on in training camp and read the reports about what kind of disruption he's causing, because we don't get any of that in the spring with no pads. So I'm very curious and excited about this tandem that he and Simmons can be.
Me too. I can't wait to watch T'Vondre Sweat this year. I do think he's going to take that sophomore step forward. I fully expect it, and I'm very much here for it. Really, really excited about him and Jeffery Simmons as the interior duo on this defensive line.
And then backing them up, Sebastian Joseph Day and Keondre Coburn. I think both those guys are probably making the roster. I think Sebastian Joseph Day's roster spot is more secure than Keondre Coburn's. I think there's an outside chance that Coburn could be unseated by one of these UDFAs if they impress throughout training camp. But for the most part, that's a really good... Sebastian Joseph Day is a starting level player in the NFL. He's not a great player. He's not going to get you 10 sacks, but he's...
I thought he played quite well this past season, better than I had expectations, because I talked to some people who didn't really like him in his previous stops on his past teams, but 77.7 run defense grade, Pro Football Focus, 16 quarterback pressures, 2.5 sacks. Gave the Titans a lot of valuable snaps, really good snaps. Look, I always say this, when a new GM comes in, look at who Mike Borgonzi re-signed when he came in as GM. Guys who were on expiring deals last year: Sebastian Joseph Day, James Lynch, Darrell Baker Jr. This is how you fill in a roster, right? Valuable role players who come in and give you good snaps, veteran experienced players. Sebastian Joseph Day is at the top of that list, obviously. He got the most lucrative deal out of those three players that were re-signed by Borgonzi. He played good ball last year. He's going to play good ball again this year. He had great chemistry with Jeffery Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat. And with both of those guys, by the way, Simmons and Sweat, as we just discussed, getting better this year, we hope. It's only going to help Sebastian Joseph Day. He should have another productive season in Nashville.
And his role is very important. Him, Coburn, and James Lynch, if he gets in this mix as well, they have to spell Simmons and Sweat. And we've seen it year after year in the NFL. The best defensive lines are often the deepest defensive lines. And you don't want Jeffery Simmons playing 90% of snaps. You want him fresh. You want him out there in the fourth quarter playing his best ball. And I think that is what having quality depth allows you to do. You feel okay in the second quarter putting Sebastian Joseph Day and Keondre Coburn out on the field for a drive or two and giving the other guys a chance to catch their breath, because you're not going to be too hurt by it. And then when you need that big stop in the fourth quarter, Simmons is fresher, Sweat's fresher. So I think these guys are important to this team. And this is, this in the safety position, I'd say, have the best collection of depth, where if the top two guys were to get injured and miss time for any period, I would feel fine with Sebastian Joseph Day and Keondre Coburn being your starters. I'm not feeling good, but as far as depth goes in the NFL, you'll be hard pressed to find a more reliable collection of guys that you're like, we can survive a game or two if these guys have to start, versus pick another position. If the top two corners get injured, you're screwed. The top two linebackers get injured, you're screwed. The D-line, you're not screwed. It's not great, but you're not screwed.
This group. I'll disagree with you. I'll still disagree. I like this group. I like it because it's got Jeffery Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat. They needs to have those two guys at the top, obviously. I mean, look, I love Sebastian Joseph Day. I think he's very useful in the collective as that third guy, but I'd be very concerned if he was the top guy in this room, and he would be the top guy in the room.
Well, I'm not saying if they miss the season you feel good. I'm saying if you have to survive a game or two.
Sure. Well, we'll let it go, but I'll move on to the others.
Wait, let us know in the comments who's right. Justin or Justin. Just put
You're going to
Justin,
side
so we
with
both.
Melo. You say Melo because I know you're
No,
going to side with
just
Melo
put
on this
Justin, so we both feel like
one. No,
we
put
are
Melo.
in the right.
I'm going to move on. They re-signed James Lynch pretty late in the offseason here. To me, it was a sign that maybe they didn't like the rest of the room as much. I want to say they signed him after they had already done one of the offseason phases. So it leads me to believe they weren't maybe as impressed with the rest of this group. James Lynch gave them, 200, 250, 300 defensive snaps last year. It was good, valuable snaps. Again, he's back for a reason. I do have him making the team, and I do put him at the number 4 spot because I think if one of these back-end DNs is going to lose their job, or DLs, I should say, because Keondre Coburn certainly not a DN. He's a nose tackle, an NT, giving you all the abbreviations. I think Keondre Coburn is at more risk here. I like what he does. I think he's the premier primary backup to T'Vondre Sweat, but again, he's going to have to earn that. How about I run through rapid fire on the rest because I don't think we got to spend a lot of time on these guys.
I agree. Let me just separate Carlos Watkins from the remaining 4 after him in the sense that he's a veteran guy. He's been around the league. He's played a lot of snaps.
87 career games for Carlos Watkins in the NFL.
That's a shitload.
87 career. He's been around forever. But again, I do think he's sort of facing an uphill battle, but it does make sense to kind of separate him. The thing is, I don't think he's a true nose. So I don't know that he could replace a Keondre Coburn. He's probably more in competition with like a James Lynch. But I think James Lynch has the upper hand, and he was here last year. If anyone's going to place Keondre Coburn, out of the nose tackles we're going to discuss, the UDFAs that we're going to discuss, I think only 1 or 2 of them are true nose tackles. That's Isaiah Rakes out of Auburn is probably the one that stands out to me the most. They gave him $85,000 guaranteed, so that could mean a little something. He's 320 plus pounds. Again, he's probably the guy. If Carlos Watkins is below James Lynch, I'd say Isaiah Rakes is below Keondre Coburn, but both of those guys will have an opportunity to prove themselves at training camp and take that spot. Because again, we're not going to treat James Lynch and Keondre Coburn like they're superstars. The one who intrigues me by far the most, and I love talking about this guy, I don't do it enough, is Devontae O'Malley. This guy, why'd he go undrafted? I'll try to give you a 30-second elevator pitch. A little undersized, 6'2", 284. That's not ideal size for an interior D lineman. But that sometimes being undersized means athleticism. That athleticism popped on tape. 4.95 at the pro day in the 40-yard dash at 284 pounds. He had 8 sacks this past year at Northern Illinois. So the athleticism and the numbers pop. He's undersized. It was a small school where he racked up those numbers. So there are some questions there. I can't wait to monitor him at training camp. The other guy, or one of the other guys, Cam Horsley.
Wait, before you move on from O'Malley, I just want to point out that sack numbers can fluctuate, cleanup and blah, 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 but a really good way to measure defensive lineman impact, and this is a trait that usually tracks from college to pros, is tackles for loss plus sacks. And this guy, not only did he have 8 sacks last year, he had 12 tackles for loss, which is a separate stat. Those don't get counted together. It's not like 8 of those 12 tackles for loss were sacks. No, 12 tackles for loss plus 8 sacks, 20 disruptive negative plays forced. I think that is very intriguing, and I kind of can't wait to see him in the preseason against the 3rd string, 4th string offensive lineman for the other team. So yes, move on to Cam Horsley now and finish this out.
Yeah, Cam Horsley's a guy who I wish I remembered now. I was speaking to a scout before, I think it was a scouting director for an NFL team before the NFL draft, way before the Titans signed him, and put this kid on my radar. I think he's a guy who's better than the numbers indicate. 40 tackles in back-to-back years, 2023, 2024. This past year, career high in TFLs with 7. He's got some athleticism. He knows how to knife into the backfield. Again, not a true nose, so I'll put him in that James Lynch sort of Devontae O'Malley, Carlos Watkins bucket of what kind of position he's competing for here. I think we missed a UDFA in here, or I did at least. It's Philip Bleedy out of Auburn in that same bucket. Also, so Titans signed 2 D linemen out of Auburn after the draft. Isaiah Rakes being one, Philip Bleedy being the other. Previously played at Indiana, same thing, undersized, 6'3", 284. That's partially why he went undrafted. This past year, he had 21 tackles at Auburn. Never really lived up to the potential. Again, 2 previous programs, Indiana and Texas Tech, 5 career seasons in college ball, only 3.5 sacks in that time, 11.5 TFLs. He had a couple of years back-to-back where he had 4 or more TFLs. Anytime you watch him, you watch Auburn tape, I feel like he would pop occasionally, but there just wasn't any consistency there. I see why they're intrigued by him. You want to explore that potential. Geez, they got 4 UDFAs in this room. I think Devontae Malley's the one, again, that I'm most intrigued by. Isaiah Rakes might be the one with the best pathway because he's probably competing against Keondre Coburn for that backup nose tackle spot, where the rest of these guys, I don't think any of them could play nose. They've all got to compete with James Lynch and Carlos Watkins. You know what I mean? Like, you got to separate these by positions a little bit, right? It's the same thing what we did with Sebastian Joseph Day, right? Like, Sebastian Joseph Day is not T'Vondre Sweat, just like Isaiah Rakes and Keondre Coburn and Deontay Malley are not alike, per se. So you split it up. Maybe Rakes has the best pathway, and he got $85K guaranteed, as I said. But I'm super intrigued by Devontae Malley. I'm intrigued by Cam Horsley. I mean, there are a couple of guys here, again, like Philip Leedy, who flashed occasionally.
All right, let's close this out quickly with a roster projection here. Justin, now in the article you wrote a few weeks ago, you had 5 interior D linemen making the roster, and they were the top 5 that we talked about: Simmons, Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, Coburn, and James Lynch. Devontae O'Malley could supplant, or any of these guys. Who? James Lynch? Is he the 5th man in this group? And what has to happen in training camp and preseason for that starting group of 5, or that top group of 5, to not be the final 5? Injury or performance? What has to go wrong here?
So I'm sticking with the same 5 I had. I've got James Lynch and Keondre Coburn as the last 2 in. I don't want to call one of them 4, one of them 5, because I'll reiterate, these are different positions they're competing for. So for me, it's literally James Lynch against probably Carlos Watkins, Devontae O'Malley, and maybe Cam Horsley, right? And then for Keondre Coburn, it's probably Keondre Coburn versus Isaiah Rakes. I don't think any of these guys could play that backup nose tackle spot like those 2 can. So for me, they're competing for 2 different spots, but there's 1 each for them, right? There's a 4th and there's a 5th, and it's 2 different roles that they're going to play. So I'm sticking with James Lynch and Keondre Coburn, but you know, Carlos Watkins, Cam Horsley, Isaiah Rakes, and Devontae O'Malley are the 4 that are knocking on the door.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how the training camp competition shakes out, because I think I opened this by saying we had 4 locks. I'm going to revise that. I think the top 3 are locks.
Yes.
Coburn and Lynch got to cement themselves. Like, they obviously have a big leg up, but they need training camp and preseason to cement
like
themselves.
65% locks kind of thing. Yeah. That's where I'd put that number roughly.
I agree. So there you have it. That is the interior defensive line position group, and that is a whole week of position groups. And if you're watching this on Thursday night or Friday morning and you missed the other ones, guess what? You got a whole weekend to catch up. We started the week with safeties, and we did tight ends, corners, wide receivers, and then we're closing it out with IDL. And on Monday, we will be back with another episode continuing on this side of the ball. Well, the trenches, I should say, with the offensive line. And we're going to keep going. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We got an episode every day for 2 straight weeks leading up to training camp, which is faster and faster approaching than maybe some people realize. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Drop your thoughts in a comment below. Which one of us was right? I don't remember what we were arguing about now, to be honest. How good is Sebastian how good would the Titans be if somebody got injured? Anyway, whatever. Let us know in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, like the video. Appreciate you all tuning in. Check out the link to Sinkers Beverages 40th birthday jamboree that I talked about yesterday in the podcast description. Get your tickets, only $10. Supports a good cause, the Martha K. O'Brien Center, and you get 2 free drinks with your $10 tickets. So might as well just buy those, go drink, and then get out of there, or stay, hang out, have some drinks, listen to some live music. It's gonna be a fun time. August 9th, check it out. All right, Justin. That'll do it for a busy week of shows. And we got another one coming up. And then it's training camp. There's no off season for us here at the Music City Audible. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Until Monday, y'all stay safe out there. And by Monday, I mean Sunday night, but really Monday. Y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.